So thank you for hanging around. From here on in, I'll probably just refer to it as influencers rather than influencers and foodies. There's only 15 minutes and I don't want to double the length of the presentation by using too many words. I love a picture of myself, especially on a cold day in Belfast. I'm not from Belfast, you've probably worked that out already. We're a digital agency, we do a lot in food and drink. I've worked in a few other places before. I'm a blogger, which apparently makes me an influencer as well. I write for Irish Tech News. I have my own blog, which is XMO Sports Project, and I've got a master's in marketing. So I try and bring a little bit of academic rigour to what we do in digital marketing. It's not just making it up as we go along. Who we work with, we've worked with, let's see, we don't work with all of those at the minute, we're not working with Linwoods currently, but everybody else on there is a current client. So we do quite a lot in the food and drink sector. It's probably about 40% of our turnover by billings. This one down here at the bottom, Piccalilli, is a food and travel blog which the head of digital marketing runs. That'll become relevant later when we get back into that. So, influencer marketing's all the rage at the minute. Everybody's talking about influencer marketing. When I start talking to people, it becomes really apparent fairly quickly. Nobody really knows what it is. So there's a kind of an academic description there that it's someone who is well connected online and is seen as an influential person in a certain industry. It sounds fantastic, doesn't it? But it also sounds a bit academic. So in true digital marketing fashion, we thought, do you know what, there's got to be more to it than that. So we looked around and we found an infographic that told us exactly what an influencer is. So this is by Tracker, you can see the link there, and they identified 10 different personas of an influencer. So that could be a celebrity, an author, a journalist, an expert. There's 10 different types of personas, and that felt like actually this was maybe a better way to identify to people what an influencer is. But it kind of misses one really important persona. Does anybody know what's missing from that list? You might not be able to read it. So it's celebrity, author, connector, personal brand, analyst, activist, expert, insider, disruptor, journalist. That's a lot to take in, isn't it? Anyone. You. Anyone's an influencer. Does anyone know who this woman is? Candace Payne, she's called. Does anybody know who she is? One at the back, hold on there. Anybody else know who she is? This video she's posted got 61 million views. Some of you have probably seen it. Anybody want to go who she is, Colin? Oh. Does anybody remember the Chewbacca mask? This is the woman with the Chewbacca mask. James Corden started making carpool videos with people wearing a Chewbacca mask. This is just a normal woman from the street. If you don't think she's an influencer, look at what happened to people Googling Chewbacca mask after she released that video. It went from nobody, literally nobody was Googling Chewbacca mask. So that's people Googling her, Chewbacca mask lady, and that's people looking for the mask. Anyone can really be an influencer, which doesn't really help, to be honest. So when we just nip back to the earlier slide, to this one and to this is more about what influencer and foodies means in this sector. It's about already tapping into those people with an influence, but whatever you do, don't discount anyone just because you think that they've got a small following, because normal people can have a massive influence on what you do. So the key points of when you're looking to work with an influencer is to do your research. The most important thing you want to do is research first. We work with clients in the food and drink sector, and nobody a couple of years ago was asking to work with Joe Wicks. Now almost every client we work with says, what about the body coach? Should we get him on board to work with our brand? And it's easy to see why. 1.4 million followers on Instagram. He's got his own TV show now. He's got a column in the Daily Mail. He's everywhere. He talks about food as much as he talks about exercise. So let's go and work with Joe Wicks. He talks about midget trees. You've got the broccoli marketing board, if such a thing exists, or whoever they are saying that broccoli sales are up about 25% in the UK, all on the back of Joe Wicks calling them midget trees. And he's had that influence. So why don't we just go and work with him? That's what everybody asks us. Let's get Joe Wicks. We work with, one of the brands we work with wanted Joe Wicks, and we brought them Louise Cooney. Louise is a fashion, beauty, lifestyle blogger from Dublin. Some of you may have come across her, some of you may follow her. And we worked with her instead. She's got 26,500 followers. The reason we did that every digital marketing presentation has to have a picture of a cat in it. That's just the law. So we thought we'd get you a nice little cat. Bigger does not always mean better when you're looking at working with influencers. People get obsessed with the top line number. Joe's got 1.4 million followers. Why would I work with Louise? Well, that's because if you work with people who've got a bigger following, it almost always means it doesn't always mean they'll have a bigger reach. It doesn't mean they'll have a bigger engagement, but it does mean they'll charge you a lot more money. That tends to be what happens. Especially on Facebook, if they have a big following on Facebook. Facebook have this thing, an algorithm that they use to decide what posts to show in people's newsfeed. You don't just see everyone's post in a timely way. It decides what you want to use. It used to be called EdgeRank. Most people still call it EdgeRank, but Facebook don't anymore. But you could have 50, 60,000 followers, you could have 100, 1 million followers. And as you post content on your page, not all of those people are going to see it. But you can bet your bottom dollar that their PR agency or their agent is going saying, we've got 1 million followers, you need to pay for them. So you really need to have a look at what that means and start to dig into it and work out what's right for you. Where are you going to get the biggest bang for your buck? The important thing we always tell people as well is stop copying your competitors. They don't know what they're doing either. Don't just have a look and say, right, well, this company in our sector is doing this, working with these people, we need to get on and start working with the same people. Honestly, they haven't got a clue. Some of the meetings I sit in with some of the biggest clients we work with are genuinely frightening about how little idea some of the marketing teams have got when it comes to things like this. So don't just blindly copy what everybody else is doing. So what we do at the Tomorrow Lab is we have a system where we work and we give people what we call a T-score. So we look at how many followers they have. We look at their last, depending on what project we're looking at doing, we can look at their last month's worth of activity. It could be longer, it could be shorter. And we look at how many people have been reached by that, how many people have commented, how many people have engaged with that. And that's how we come up with Louise Cooney instead of Joe Wicks. Joe Wicks puts this post out to his 1.4 million followers and he might get 200 comments underneath it, which is fantastic. Louise puts a post out, she might get 400 comments underneath it. She engages with people, she starts a conversation. People say, where did you get that? And she tells them where she bought it. You don't get that when you buy Joe Wicks. You get that when you buy Louise Cooney. So that's how we look at it, and we come up with a T-score which will give you an idea. And then when we get further down the line, at the end, when we do the post-campaign evaluation, we start to look at how much it costs to reach a certain number of people. And you can bet your bottom dollar 26,000 followers gives you a better return on investment than the 1.4 million does. Once you've worked out who you want to talk to, you've got to start looking at outreach. How do you get in touch with these people? If you want the big ones, they'll have an agent. Just Google Joe Wicks agent, you'll find it straight away. If you want the small ones, you have to go directly to them yourself. So how do you do that? Influencers are human, you're human, be human about it, right? Got stalk, interact, engage. Stalk's maybe a little bit creepy, but people tend to remember it that way. Don't just pick a list of people and then fire off a blanket email to them all. I can tell you now that influencers get hundreds of emails a month from people saying, will you work with us? And they only pick the ones they want to work with. So you have to stand out when you're getting in touch with them. So Piccalilli, the blog we were talking about earlier, who works with me, runs, these are a couple of examples of people who've been in touch with him. This one is a good one. So it's got a name in it, Hello Helen, so someone's taken the time to find that out. They've read the post, A Guide to Creating Lace Designs on Cupcakes. They've actually taken the time to read it. None of this is life-changing information, right? If you want to work with someone, read what they've written, see if it fits with your brand, get in touch and let them know you've done that. It's relevant. We've teamed up with blah, 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 something about cake decorating, so it's relevant to what they write about. And there's an exchange. This is really important. There's a commercial exchange here. If you do something for us, we'll do something for you. Here's another one, another good one. Hello, Niall and Helen. They both write the blog, they're both together on this. Here's something, will you do, it's a photograph, will you take a photograph for us, send it to us, we'll give you £50 in return. Simple stuff, but you'd be amazed. Here's another one they got. Dear Helen, below is a software developer idea gen for Android. Anyone think why a food and travel blog would want to publish that? Here's another one of my favourites. Name, hi. I literally can't be bothered to read your blog, which on the first page says Niall and Helen's food blog, and I can't be bothered to do that and put it in here at the beginning. No, they didn't work with them. This is, what else is this related to? There's no information in it. Will I write something that'll be enjoyable for your readers? I don't care. They didn't care. This one went in the junk bin. Just take a little bit of time. If you're trying to work with 50 or 100 bloggers, which a lot of people do, this can take some time. It's not a shortcut. You have to read, you have to understand what they do, you have to get involved with them in that way. But you have to remember as well, when you're working with these people, I mentioned commercial exchange earlier. This isn't about getting people to do stuff for free because they have a small following. This is an actual picture of me and Niall in the office when we have a client come in and say something like, can you get us 1,000 foodies who are interested in taking our product for free and will write lovely things about it for us? Yeah, okay, how much are you going to pay them to do this? Well, with no real budget, we've cut all marketing spend this year, so we just want to do this because it's free. That's literally what happens in the office, and we want to kill people, we want to throw them out the window. There is a little bit of violence, you know, it's Belfast, we try and throw people out the window, so you have to be realistic. It's a business transaction. Bloggers make money off what they do, or they like to get things in return for what they do. Different people will ask for different things, but they're all aware of their value. They talk. There's lots of blogger groups, secret groups on Facebook, forums where they talk and exchange information. If you give them a really crappy approach, they will put that on the forum and say, did you know this brand sent this thing to us and it was bloody horrible? And they talk about you when you're not in the room. So be aware of that and be realistic with what you offer them. The other thing is, have your limits. Just because they're asking for €300 or €1,000 for something doesn't mean you have to pay it. It's a commercial transaction. If you don't think it's worth it, don't pay it. Just because I'm saying you have to have a value and it has to be there, you don't just have to play with what they ask. So know your limits. Where are we? The other thing you have to do is trust your product. My old friend, Comrade Starling, would be proud of some of the things I've been asked to do. I want you to get these bloggers to write about my product. Okay, yeah, we've got budget. Brilliant, okay, yeah, let's do it. One little thing, here's what we want them to write. Beg your pardon? We want them to write, we want them to include these 10 bullet points, we want them to say it's bought here, you can get it here, and here's a link to where you can order it online. Right, that's not how this works. Starling, unfortunately, doesn't run the media anymore. So, don't try and influence online editorial. If your product is good, if you trust in it, people will write about it and say it's good. If your product is bad, they'll often try and find something constructive to say. And if your product's bloody awful, they'll probably just not write anything. You'll still have had to pay for it, but they probably won't write anything. The reason for this is when you're doing your research, if you read the last 20 posts on a blog and it says, I use this clicker, it was shit. I use this microphone, it was awful. I use that computer, it's bloody rubbish. I use it. Do you think you're going to put them into your list of potential bloggers to work with? No. Brands like to work with people who are nice and positive and say great things. So if it's good, they'll say. If it's bad, they might be a bit constructive, but they'll still find some good points. If it's awful, we usually get an email back saying, look, I tried it, it was rubbish. We're just not going to write about it. Thanks very much for the €100 though. So you have to trust in what you do. Another thing you can do is you can work with influencers as ambassadors. A lot of the time, brands want to do a one-off thing because your campaigns tend to work over a 6-week or a 3-month campaign, something like that, which is fine. So, we pick up 50, 100, 250 influencers to work with. Here's a product, use this once, see what you think, and then off you go. This is a quote from one of the influencers we work with. The chance to work with a brand over a few months rather than just a one-off felt more authentic and more exciting. They have to be really careful about nurturing their following because people see if they're just being sold to all the time. So when they get a chance to work on a campaign where you can use them over 6 months, they love it. Nobody's offering that. People are going to them saying, try my product, write about it, isn't it great? If you can go and say, we want you to be part of this for 6 months, they will love that. The price over 6 months will be much better for you as well. What you're going to get back from it's going to be much better. So don't just think it needs to be a one-off thing. You can move around and use it a lot more. You also need to measure your activity. I love using the old marketing theory because people are always telling me, oh, you know, the way people buy now has changed. It's fundamentally different. It's fundamentally rubbish, right? People don't evolve that quickly. Technology's moved on really quickly. We don't evolve that quickly. So have a look at old things like this. Are you trying to get brand awareness? Are you trying to raise interest, desire, or action in your product? Depending on what you're doing, new product launch at the top, you know, no one's ever heard of this new thing you're launching, awareness, all the way down to we need to double sales by the end of this afternoon, action. Depending on what you're doing, that depends on what your measurement needs to be. But whatever you're doing, whatever you're using these influencers for, make sure you measure it. So this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour. This was a 45-minute presentation that's been squeezed into 15. But in conclusion, influencers are not miracle workers. If you have cut your marketing budget, which does happen, and you can't afford to go on TV anymore, and you're not doing radio, and you're not doing traditional above-the-line stuff, don't think that you can just spend €5,000 working with influencers and your sales are going to be the same as last year. They play a vital role in reaching people. They provide authenticity that a lot of other channels don't, but they cost, and you have to treat it as a business transaction. If you don't, it's going to go wrong. It's not on the cheap. You have to plan it. That involves time, that involves getting in touch and reading with what people are doing. You have to research, as I said, and you have to measure. Are you going to use these people again? My favourite quote that I've heard recently from someone else in a presentation is my last slide: hope is not a strategy. Don't just pick a few people and hope it's going to work. Really spend the time on research, because that's where you'll get your money back. Spending it and researching, understanding who you're going to pick with, and not just picking someone because they had 1.4 million followers and one of your competitors in the UK used them. Right, that's it. Thank you very much. I'm here at the end. You can tweet me. I'll put the link up as well later, so you can download the slides if you like.